I'm Allie with Potomac Beads. In this Beader episode, we are going to solve the issue of what happens if you happen to have a piece of jewelry that gets caught on something that snags and the thread snaps. How do you go about repairing that? I'm going to show you now. So to get started in the repair, one thing you want to look at is where it is broken and basically retrace the steps of how it broke. Sometimes it's going to be very simple that you'll be able to see the thread line exactly where it's coming out. Something like this that got caught on a door or a hook while you're opening it and maybe some seed beads flew. First thing to do is gather the materials if you have a couple that are needed in order to do the repair. So I know that I have some 11 OC beads here on this Vatican View bracelet that need to be repaired. I'm going to get those out. To show you, I have some green wildfire beading thread, and the bracelet is strung with white thread. So the number one thing that I need to do is repair this area right here along the bracelet that actually broke. One thing you do want to keep in mind is how the bracelet was built. Was it built in these rows, or did that happen to just snap and the connector went? So look back at the instructions if you remember. Prior to tracing back and pulling out some of the thread that is broken, I'm going to actually work on repairing this section, and then I'll go back and actually tie on the thread ends and get rid of the thread ends that are still there. I'm going to go into the project here, back where I can see it's starting to come out, and I'm going to go a couple rows down from there, so I'm not ending right at where the thread is broken, and I'm going to sew through the project along that same thread line. Trying not to take out more of the thread that is currently breaking, because what I want to do is make sure my thread path is going the correct way, and I don't want to have to guess too much about the repair that I need to make and what the pattern is. I can look on the other side of this one, which is nice, and see where I need to go up into the project and connect the piece. Going back in here to that 11-0, going through. So you'll notice I did not take away the broken thread yet, and I did not pull it out. I will eventually do that as I continue with the project. So I'm going to go in here, and once I have this basically all stitched together, I'll go back and I'll reinforce that section as well, and then start to rip out some of the old thread. Sometimes if the beads have really small holes, you may struggle to rip out the old thread, and you may need to take the old thread out first so it does not get dangled in the project. When possible, I like to keep the thread in during the repair, but sometimes it is impossible to do so just because of the limitations of the hole size of the bead. So I'm going to continue sewing up this Vatican View and making the connection by seaming up where this thread line seems to have snapped. As you can see, I already have kind of two beads back in there. That thread end is there, and then I have a nice long tail. That nice long tail back at the beginning of the project is going to allow me to kind of tuck it back into the project so that you cannot see the white versus the green. And then as I go into, I can knot the two thread ends together, burn them down, and apply a little bit of glue if you need to as well. As I seam this back up, another thing to think about is wherever you start and stop the new thread, you are going to want to make sure that you reinforce that area, meaning add an additional row of thread. So after I go back up and kind of seam this together, I'm going to make sure to add an additional piece of thread. So I'll have two thread passes where there normally would be one. Now you can see I have that bead there. Sometimes also you will have a broken bead that you'll kind of have to stitch in there and add along the way. You may see a tiny bit of extra thread in some instances when you add a bead, but it's better than not being able to use the bead at all. So this turned, and I know looking at it, my thread needs to come out the other hole of the piece. And I'll go back and seam this in. Once I get back here to the connection, I'll round it out doing a little bit of right angle weave. The more stitches you know, the more you can look at a project and say, okay, that's a right angle weave right there. I will stitch that together. After I go in and stitch, coming up the side here, connecting this, I'll step down and do this right angle weave stitch. Once I have my green stitch good to go that I could pull and it's not going to pull apart, then I'll go back and I'll show you how I'm going to pull the white thread out of the project. This bracelet is unusual because it has a tear in the thread in multiple places, so I'm kind of working to repair multiple issues. I've gone up the side here and added in that pinch bead on the Vatican view, and I know that I have this thread sitting down here that it's coming out of. I have another break right here. It looks like it broke in two different locations. And what I'm going to do now is circle around, like I said, and do kind of that right angle weave. So I'm coming back down the center. I try with my hands to hold onto as much of the bracelet and much of the design as I can. So that way it's not that guessing game of where things came from and where things were coming out of. I'm now going in and doing that little right angle weave stitch here. Making sure again to reinforce by doing this multiple times. Once you know everything is kind of held together and your stitch is good, then you're going to slowly undo the broken thread to take it back and make it long enough that you can tie a knot with it. So I have the initial broken thread back here at the beginning, and if you need to, you can use a bead reamer, you can use another needle. And sometimes if you have really small holes, you can just burn it down with a thread burner. But I can take another needle now, go back to where that thread stitch is, and pull and see where it's coming out of. So it's coming out right there. I have about an inch left there. And I know that I can bring the starter thread up to there and tie those two knots together. That will take care of that end. On this end here, I have my white thread. Again, it's already come back enough that I can kind of hold on to. I've got about an inch left. But these two white threads here, I need to figure out where they're coming from and how they're broken. I'm going to go back into the project, especially because I've done the repair with a different color, and try to figure out where that broken thread is coming from and where it ends. So I'll go in there and kind of fish around with the thread a little bit, and I can see exactly where it's coming from. So I have that broken piece right there. Usually if you find one end of the break, you'll find the other end. I'm going to pull this one out of here. Again, so that way looking back at my thread steps and seeing exactly where it's coming from. And as I pull this one out here then, I have the small one here, small one here, small one on the other end. What I'm going to do is take my thread and needle, go to all of those different locations, and tie threads together. So I'm going to take those two little thread ends together. If you are really worried about seeing knots and seeing thread ends, what you want to do is take it back even further in the project and go in and weave the two threads further back along the project in opposite directions. Once I have that knot there, I'm going to do a nice tight pull, getting that as close to the bead as possible. Keep that thread end there, because we are going to do a little dab of glue on it, or burn it down. Come back to the project here. I'm going to get my thread and needle back along the thread line, seeing where I'm not going to see any additional thread. So I'm going everywhere basically that the original thread line would go. And then when I get back to this area as well, I'll tie this one in a knot. Last thing I'll do then is take my thread and needle around, tie this one in a knot. Once those knots are all tied and done, you can take a thread zap, a thread burner, burn that thread edge down, and you'll be able to then see the bracelet in its glory, all repaired without any additional thread showing. The little bit of thread that's going to show here is because it's green versus white going through the crystal. But again, I'll go through, tie these off, and then sew back down into the project a little bit, down towards the starter end, and tie these two starter ends off after I tie onto this white thread. So it's kind of a game of going through and going with the idea of kind of tying off the knots, reinforcing that area, and back stitching along the piece, both forward and back from that broken thread and that connection point. You don't want it to break again, obviously, so you want to be aware of that as you're working with it. Sometimes, and some pieces, it's going to be easier just to go ahead and restart the bracelet if it didn't take you a lot of time. If it is a flat peyote piece, you definitely want to burn down the thread end, start about 2 rows back, and weave that in. I have that in another video of how to start and end a needle when working with peyote. As with all of these Better Beader episodes, hopefully this taught you some helpful hints on how to repair some jewelry that unfortunately may have gotten stuck or snagged on something. Let's face it, the thread, they say, is kind of unbreakable, but there's always that issue that it can break and that it's caught on something, or that it gets kind of stepped on or worked with and just kind of overused. So now you should be able to go in and repair those. Again, if you can, go through and repair it first and then deal with the thread end damages. That way you'll be able to see exactly where the thread goes and where those beads go if it's been a while since you made it. Again, these YouTube videos are made to make you a better beader, so remember to click that little bell there in the corner to get regular updates from us here at Potomac Beads so you don't miss any Better Beader episodes, as well as awesome jewelry ideas, designs, and new things coming to the market. As well as comment below, tell your tricks and your tips for doing the same thing. It's always helpful to build that beading community and to make the knowledge grow even in this video. Or share it with a friend that you may have just had that sad experience with them where their bracelet broke.